Hi, everyone, and welcome to Soul Simple Life Shifts. Today, I want to talk about the shift from, what we're going to talk about is neutrality. And this one is one that it's really nuanced. It took me a long time to really arrive at what exactly is neutrality. And I'll be honest, in the beginning, I did not like that term. I'm like, neutrality, who wants to be that? Like, it did not appeal to me whatsoever because I am very dynamic and I prefer to express, as many of you know. And so this whole idea of neutrality felt like very muted and very, I don't know, that's the way that I was perceiving it, but that's actually not what neutrality is. So let's back up and let's look at how we have approached this topic in the past. Often we are in life drawn to these repeated cycles of drama and trauma and patterns, replicated patterns and repeated, like in relationships, but also just in terms of our life experience, we find ourselves, we're like, well, wait, this is very similar to what happened when this other time when I lost everything, or when there was a big blow up, or, whatever it is for you, because we're all different. I know, let me give you another example. Those are clearly examples from my own life. But like another example would be someone who finds themselves with repeated patterns of missing an opportunity or repeated patterns of feeling small. So again, we all have our particular triggers and particular patterns and, childhood experiences. And so this is going to look different for all of us. But at some point, you'll begin to notice, if you look at, particularly if you start looking over many years or decades, and you really give some attention to your life experiences. And I really encourage you to do like a life map where you really start looking at like 3-year periods, 7-year periods, because you will notice the patterns. For me, it's most obvious in terms of two things. For me, personally, it's most obvious in my money and business or career success cycles, and also in relationships. I think for most people, relationships is a common area where you can begin to see patterns. Even if you just have had one long-standing relationship, and then your work relationships and friendships, you can begin to notice repeating experiences in terms of your feelings, your thoughts, your behaviors, or repeated things that you receive or don't receive in your life. So the issue is that many of us, number one, get stuck in those repeated patterns of drama and trauma, and we begin to relate to those or react to them in specific ways. And we become very attached to those patterns or to the pushing away of those patterns, which actually only gives them more power. So I'm approaching this a little bit of a roundabout way, but let's just look for a moment at that whole area of these repeated patterns of drama and trauma. Well, the invitation, of course, is to move into detachment and into somewhat of a removing ourselves from the middle of the experience and becoming the observer of our experience and detaching, and in some respects allowing what is. And this also then the other part, that's in terms of our own life, but there's also this other part of judgment. We can often look at people and situations around us and make judgments about those, and really it's projected experience and shame and blame and those kinds of things that come into play. And the invitation in both instances, externally in terms of other people and other situations in the larger world, and also in terms of our own experience, is to step back, step out of shame and blame and judgment and just the repetition of the pattern over and over and over again, and then complaining about it, and step out of like the focus on being immersed in all those experiences and feeling icky about it, stepping back and bringing a level of neutrality. So this is easiest understood, I think, with the external things that are happening. And this does not mean that you don't care, you don't wish it were different, you don't take action to affect some change in some instances. It simply means that you remove the need to emotionally be so invested and mentally be so invested that you are actually allowing that to become a distraction, to distract you, to throw you off course, to cause you to lose traction in your own life. And so neutrality is a way of becoming the observer of your experience and detaching. So I like to use a little tool. That wasn't the best explanation, so I really invite you to look into this topic of neutrality. It's like I said, it's something I really struggled with for a long time because I'm very expressive in general, and I like to just like dive in there and like work things out and or acknowledge what I'm feeling or thinking in the moment and then figure it out as I go. That's just my natural approach. And so this whole stepping back and detachment is something that it takes me a beat, it takes me a minute. So a tool that I have used, a Soul Simple Life practice that I can share with you, and this is just one, is something that I termed no emo, no schemo, unvelcro. So where this comes from, so number one, when my son was growing up, oh my gosh, that was the emo era. And I was like, I actually like the music. He's still like, well, he wouldn't call it emo. It's alternative rock, I guess. But in any case, I liked it, but man, like enough. I could only take 2 songs at once or something. And, that was what, 20 years ago. But so I just lovingly call that no emo to remind me no overly emotional involvement, engagement, or reaction to my own drama or trauma or anybody else's or anything else that I feel this immediate emotional need to express. I need to stop and evaluate. So no, that's what the no emo is, no emotional overinvestment or overreaction. No schemo, pretty obvious, no scheming. Because what I found, I noticed this pattern, like I was actually usually pretty good with my thought patterns until I would get like very annoyed about, particularly this came up with like a situation where there were multiple people involved and I was like really annoyed at one little thing. And to deal with the annoyance, I found I would fall into this trap of like letting this thing run in my head that I wasn't ever going to actually do, but it was literally like seething and scheming, like, oh, I hope that person gets theirs, or, something like that. So that's what, for me, the no schemo represents. And then unvelcro, unattach. And I always think of that David Letterman, like the Velcro man. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. It was a long time ago. I'm old. I'm dating myself. But so I think of the no emo, no schemo, no unvelcro as a way to remove myself, step back emotionally, step back with my mental thought patterns that are running over and over again about, like if I was in control of the universe, this is how it would be. And then the unvelcro literally being the unattaching, detachment from the situation at hand, whether that is like vastly removed as in a global situation or politics or something I have no control over in the moment, or whether it is a relationship dynamic or something at work or with a project or even a creative thing that I'm doing. So that's the thought part, no schemo. And then unvelcro is literally an unhooking of myself. And I visualize that. I literally look at the situation, like say it's an annoying thing in a relationship. I check myself on the emotions. I notice my thoughts that are running. I detach from both of those and I think, where else am I being hooked here? And often, especially in relationships or people situations, even groups and communities, often it's actually that it's triggering something that's actually not happening in the moment. It's something that has hooked on to a similar experience, and therefore I am judging the current reality or what is happening in the present based on what I think is going to happen based on past experience, or projecting to the future, or something what I'm actually reacting to isn't the thing in front of me. It's literally something that, happened when I was 7, or that happened in another friendship circle. And I'm like either panicking and wanting to avoid that, or projecting onto these people or situation something that's actually not happening. So the key with neutrality, number 1, is detachment, observation, and then pulling back that need to pounce, to be immersed and drawn into it. I also think of it visually, like for myself, I think, am I being, swung around by this experience or whatever this thing is that I clearly am a little too invested or engaged or affected by? Or am I integrally connected to my whole self and my soul self and holding my own, and then choosing my response, hopefully, as opposed to a reaction to what's happening? So that is just a little step in the direction of neutrality. Again, something of all the things I've shared, I think that's the one thing that I also operate very quickly, just my natural speed. And so I have to slow myself down to get into that state. It's becoming easier as I do my morning and evening practice consistently, and as I find other ways to express my emotions and apply my thoughts. So creativity helps me hugely in this area. I notice when I am being creative, writing, painting, even just like singing and dancing in the house or walking, anything that's expressive, I notice for myself when I'm doing those things regularly and also engaging my mind through reading or audiobooks or learning about something, I am far less likely to be pulled into particularly other people's dramas and traumas, but even my own. Like, I notice I don't escalate them as quickly when I have that creative practice. So that's another Soul Simple Life practice, is to develop a creative focus, even if it's like a project, and have that going. And then anytime you feel triggered or drawn into drama or trauma, go to the creative practice or occupy your heart and mind with something that is more of planting flowers or seeds, as opposed to focusing on what would, essentially be the weeds in your life, or getting down into, like somebody else's business, or even repeatedly dwelling on something that cannot be changed in your past, perhaps, or a particular current situation that has to be what it is right now. That's another way we can often get pulled down into, it's almost like we're pulled off path and into a track that then loops around and around and around. So looping is another thing you can look at. If that's happening, in all likelihood, there is an opportunity to bring more neutrality into your daily life. Okay, I hope that helped. I will see you next time. Thank you.